Tuesday morning, grade 10s. Today, as I mentioned yesterday on Slack, we are going to take a look at conclusions. Okay, so I thought it would be a good idea to come up with a conclusion to our sample introduction. I know it's not about any books that you've read, but nonetheless, it makes sense to kind of continue that thinking forward to a conclusion. Just quickly, also, where we're headed in the next few days and weeks in the class. I also mentioned on Slack that it's my hope for everybody to watch this video, write an amazing conclusion, send me their essay as it stands. So you should have an introduction, you should have body paragraphs, you should have a conclusion, you should more or less have a complete essay. I'd like you to send it to me. And my plan is for me to do one of these videos, but just for you. So I'll go over your essay on my screen. We'll read it. I will read it. I'll make suggestions. I'll send you that video. You can make changes that I've suggested or fix anything that I've highlighted, and then send it back to me for marking. I also mentioned that this wouldn't be due for quite some time. So not to stress about it, please. Please. Okay. If you have any questions about that, just let me know on Slack and I'll try to answer them. Conclusions. A conclusion, if you remember from the big long slideshow before, is like an introduction in reverse. So the introduction ended with the thesis. The conclusion begins by restating your thesis, ideally slightly differently. Okay, so we have here, in conclusion, it's always good to start with something like that, or to conclude, excuse me, because then your reader knows you're concluding. In conclusion, Julia and Winston both demonstrate that even though they appear to be the only citizens of Orwell's dystopic society with any semblance of an id in their personality, it is not enough to overcome the society-wide superego imbalance. Okay, so there we have essentially our thesis. Our thesis is that our essay would have proved, this essay would have proved first that, the first body paragraph would have demonstrated that Winston and Julia had an id, and the second paragraph would have showed that Big Brother, it would have had evidence of Big Brother's superego in society and how that works. And the third paragraph would have shown how Julia and Winston failed, how it was not adequate. Okay, so Big Brother has cultivated the entire city's superego, largely through surveillance, and it is because of this that Winston and Julia not only fail, but were actually doomed from the start of their rebellion. Okay, so more about the thesis, more sort of summary of my essay, and the conclusion is an introduction in reverse, in that you start specifically with your thesis, and then you move to the more general, just to compare to the introduction, where you started very general and got more specific to the thesis at the end. So this is, again, a reverse introduction. So moving on, Julia and Winston are proof that the power of an individual's personality is not enough to foment revolution. They must seek to convert others to the same way of thinking. Society is too powerful for an individual to overcome alone. Okay, so we ended with a comment about society and how powerful it can be, especially compared to one person. So it's very general. And we began with a very specific statement about our book. So we began with a very specific statement, which is largely our thesis, very similar to the end of our introduction, but slightly different. And then we talked a bit more about, we sort of summarized the points that we made. Julia, which were three. Julia and Winston have an id that led to their rebellion, but Big Brother has cultivated the superego, and that's why they failed. Okay, so that's essentially summing up our 3 points in our fictional essay here. And you'll notice that it's quite short. That's good. You do not want to have a long conclusion. You want to briefly restate your thesis, briefly remind your reader of the evidence that you brought to support your thesis, and then end with a sort of general statement about your topic. You are probably going to find that this last sentence is the hardest to write, so don't stress out about it too much. But conclusions are, while they're short and while they're fairly prescribed, like you need this, this, and this, that last general sentence is probably going to cause some people some troubles. If it does, go back to how you started. Perhaps you can make another comment about, along the lines of how you started your introduction. And sometimes that's good writing, to kind of have your first sentence and your last sentence be related. That's kind of circular essay writing. That's good writing. So anyway, short paragraph, start with your thesis, recap your arguments, refresh your reader's memory of the arguments that you just made to support your thesis, and then try to end with a general statement about your topic. Okay? So to recap, I need you to write your conclusions, and when those things are done, send me your, essentially, I guess what it ends up being is a rough copy. I will put together a screen recording video for you and send that to you, and you can take the feedback from there and make any corrections, fixes, whatever, and send them back to me for marking. Okay? Again, any questions, hit me up on Slack, and I hope everyone is doing well.